Hey everyone, it's Josh coming to the interwebs with a little video about God. Now, I am going to talk about God. I'm going to talk a little bit about my relationship and my evolving relationship with God and the idea of God and divinity. Some of you are going to hear the word God and tune right out. Some of you are going to hear the word God and be really curious as to what a fellow like me could have to say. So I'd like to just invite you to buckle up and sit down with me and have a little bit of a discussion, because I'm not only going to talk about God, I'm going to talk about something a little bit politically charged as well. And if I'm going to be all in with a potentially controversial video, I might as well go all in and talk about guns too. Okay, so first and foremost, I want to thank anybody who's tuning into this. You are interested in things like God and spirit and the dead and spirituality and magic and all of that. I've got a lot of friends in a lot of different paths, and I want to share with folks some of the things that have happened along the way to me to help me understand this. My story, and this is very important to my path and what I've come to do with my life. Yeah, I was raised in northern New England, northern New Hampshire and Vermont, to two farmers. My mom and dad were both from farming families, and when I was growing up, my mom worked in factories and she was a waitress, and my dad worked construction, and they were working class folk. I didn't have any church growing up, not at all. No church, no spirituality whatsoever. My mom, interested in doing what she thought parents should be doing, went around our local area and interviewed different churches. Interview, I guess, is the best word for it. And talked with them about... I am recording. Talked with them about what they had to offer. And across the board, she said that every church that she went and spoke with didn't talk about what they had to offer, just what the other ones didn't have to offer, or why you shouldn't go see the Baptists if you were a Methodist, or you shouldn't go see the Catholics if you were a Baptist, just that sort of thing. I'm sure everybody's pretty familiar with it, right? Our way is the right way, their way is the wrong way. So I didn't have much in the way of spirituality. Now, two of the things that I knew growing up, as soon as I kind of knew who I was, is I knew I liked scary things, ghosts, vampires, werewolves, zombies, and I knew that I was gay. And I also knew, as soon as I was gay, that I could not share any of that with anybody. That was not safe, it was not right, and in fact, everything in my world, my culture, my society, and any of the major world religions that were in this area taught me that I was the devil. Taught me that I was an abomination, taught me that I was going to hell. There are still very important people in the lives of me and my husband who tell us that they pray for us every day because we're going to hell. Because we love one another and because of the way we were born. So to give you that little bit of context, I grew up not only with no spirituality and no church, but with the majority of the message around Christianity teaching me that I was an abomination. That led me over the course of my life, my teenage years-ish, when I started to question spirituality and started to question, well, maybe God isn't real, or maybe heaven isn't a place. I became, in my own way, an anti-Christian. I was somebody who, due to the messages that I was receiving from the world and the people around me, I thought that if you were a Christian or a Catholic, you meant me harm. And in fact, if I ever met a Christian or a Catholic, I would do everything I could to run away or to assume that they were bigoted, because that was the majority of the message that I got from pretty much every Christian and Catholic that I had met. I was babysat by a Catholic family next door to us growing up, and they were incredibly bigoted, very much so. So here I am, going through my life, not an atheist, but not a Christian. More agnostic. Agnostic is kind of like, well, I know something made us. I know something put us here. Not sure what it is, and probably with my human mind, I'm not going to be able to grasp it fully. And then all of this stuff started to happen to me. My psychic stuff, my spirit communication, my mediumship. And it kind of still messes with me a little bit in the way that it blows my mind. 5 years into it, it still fascinates me and perplexes me and astounds me every day. I'm very grateful for that. When this started to happen to me, I was still that person who was like, well, if you're a Christian or a Catholic, and I'm gay, you're going to either pray for me or want to kill me, right? Thinking that I am an abomination. And I found different spiritualities along the way. I got into runes and the Norse mythologies. I got into all sorts of different things, including falling in with a group of people who were also very anti-Christian. Now, these people, their spirituality, lean more towards like traditional European shamanism, traditional witchcraft, those sorts of things. But they were all very radicalized from their experiences in church. Like, I didn't have a lot of awful experiences growing up other than what I was absorbing from culture, where a lot of people that I know, my husband included, had some pretty awful experiences in church growing up with some pretty awful people. That can affect people in a certain way. Didn't affect me, but I could see how it affected other people. And there are some pretty big problems with Christianity, the major structure of it, and how it is brought to people in the world, and how it plays into, sexist and homophobic ideals. There's a lot that is messed up with it. There is. There's a lot messed up with anything that humans lay their hands on, Christianity included. So what happened to me is, over the course of my path, I would find what I thought was a random unicorn, somebody who was Christian or somebody who was Catholic, who was like, no, how could we hate? How could we hate you? You're a child of God. You're a child of the universe. How could you hate? How could we hate you? And that was radical to me. That was radical to me, that somebody of the Christian or Catholic persuasion could look at me from a place of love. That was radical. Now, what I also experienced were people that were not Christian or Catholic that were incredibly awful human beings. They would take what they believed, they would manipulate, hinder, control all sorts of people. So I walked a path where, thinking Christians and Catholics were bad based on my experience, I found that there were some pretty wonderful Christians and Catholics out there. I also found that there were some really awful human beings out there who were working with non-Christian spiritualities. So I learned a lot. And one of the things that I learned, and am still learning along the way, is that basically, if humans can put their hands on it, if humans can use a thing or interact with it in any way, that there is guaranteed an element of humanity that will turn it into a weapon. Absolutely. I am convinced that if the major world religion in this world was the worship of Ronald McDonald, the Hamburglar, and Grimace, those three, that you would have a group of people that would say that they were channeling those spirits, and that those spirits said those people can't exist, and all of it. And those people would play into people's fear. This is important for all of us to sit with, because we all sit in a Christianized society, whether we are agnostic, whether we are atheist, or whether we're believers, or whether we have some sort of spirituality that isn't of the mainstream. We live in this matrix. We live in this framework. Now, to get a little political about guns, I will again reference the fact that I was born in northern New England. I was born into a family that had guns. Still do. And both of my parents' farming families had guns and were familiar with guns. To me, and mind you, this is to me, and I'm not asking anybody else to believe this, and I'm not looking to stir debate. I see a gun as a tool, not a weapon. I see it, based on my experience and my upbringing, as a tool that will defend your home, defend yourself, or harvest wildlife if you're a hunter. There are groups of people that will take that gun and weaponize it. It's a very powerful tool, a very dangerous tool, absolutely, and whether or not there should be more restriction, there probably should, on people who own them and use them, that's a different discussion. But for me, a gun is a tool, not a weapon. It's a tool that some people will weaponize, and I see that as really anything. I sit here with rocks that you could use as tools to build stone walls or the foundations of homes. You could take those rocks and turn them into weapons. I drove to this little park with a vehicle that is a tool that some people will take and drive into crowds of people as a weapon. Now, if you don't know how to use it well, you will unintentionally weaponize it against other people. If you didn't know how to use a gun well, you'll unintentionally weaponize it. If you don't know how to use religion well, you'll unintentionally weaponize it. Well, that's human nature. With this in mind, I found that religion, Christianity, just a tool. It does a certain thing. Connection with divinity, connection with community, what have you, to whatever degree those situations and those streams of spirituality can connect a person. There are people that will weaponize those spiritualities. I am a victim of a culture that weaponized Christianity. Combined with the fact that, I grew up in the 90s with the Catholic Church stuff going on with molestation, all of it. I grew up with a lot, and I wasn't even in church. Now, I am not ashamed to admit that I have judged people unjustly. I'm not ashamed of that because I can wear the egg on my face. I can admit that I unfairly met people based on their spirituality that I judged simply because they believed a certain thing. I did. I'm not mad at myself and I'm not ashamed of myself. I am mad at the culture that would have caused me to do that and caused those people to be judged and all of that. But I did judge them because I was traumatized by the thing that they were holding. Now, to bring it to the gun thing and why the gun thing is kind of similar. Imagine if you weren't raised in Vermont or New Hampshire or New England and your only exposure to guns was trauma and abuse, right? Imagine if you weren't raised in a culture that, like in northern New England here, this is where the Revolutionary War took place. We are America because people used guns. If you weren't raised in a culture that saw guns as tools and taught people to respect them and what they could do to you or yourself or other people, you can get traumatized by it, right? So guns, for instance, if you survived the Columbine school shooting or any other mass shooting, and your only association with guns was one of trauma and pain, if you were traumatized by a thing, anytime you run across that thing, you're going to assume the people using it are going to hurt you. Unless you find some sort of healing around that trauma, you're going to assume everybody that's wielding that thing is going to hurt you. If you had never seen a car and you watched your parents get run over by a car, you're going to assume that every car is bad and dangerous. So that's kind of what happened to me. Traumatized by the world and the religion in which I grew up. And I didn't even go to church. And yet, my path has brought me to a place where I can see there's a lot of magic in Christianity. There's a lot of connection in Christianity. I've seen it. Every spirit that comes through to me as a medium does so from a place of love and compassion. No judgment. Guidance, tough love, sure, but love and compassion and no judgment are the number one rules of the spirits that work through me. That's it. There's a lot in common with the core message of Christianity. The number one commandment that Jesus said was love thy neighbor. If you're not loving your neighbor, you're something other than Christian, right? I bring this up because there's a lot of frustration around spirituality, and we can see that. We can see people in this world doing their best trying to figure this out and finding stories that either are misguided or intentionally being used to hurt people. Whether it's Christianity, whether it's Ronald McDonald, whether it's the Norse gods, whether it's the Egyptian gods, whether it's the Greek gods, whatever it is, you're going to find people saying that this thing means a certain thing, and that means things shouldn't be a certain way. I bring this up because religion and spirituality, very important to the core of what I do. Very important to the people that I sit with, whether they're Christians or not. I also bring this up because I believe it's important for people to be able to say, I messed up. I believed a certain thing due to certain things that caused me to believe certain things. And based on growth, based on exposure, based on grace, having grace for ourselves and other people, compassion, I found that I was wrong. I understood why I was wrong, but I understood that I was wrong. And I became a person that did the thing that happened to me. I judged others based on their beliefs, based on who they were as people. Religion, spirituality, social media, internet, rocks, guns, cars, anything humans can interact with. Anything. You'll find humans somewhere will figure out how to turn it into a weapon. You also find humans doing their best to figure out how to get along with it and not hurt other people. I don't know why I have to share this with folks today, other than I'm supposed to. I got another nudge from above, I'd like to call it. It's important for people to keep an open mind. And it's important for people to remember the beliefs that a person has and how they manifest those beliefs and bring those to the world. Are they hurting others with them? Do you believe that there's a Ronald McDonald in the sky calling the shots? You can absolutely believe that. Are you taking that belief and compromising the dignity, health, and well-being of other humans? That's a big question, right? The number one thing that I believe is love. Whether that comes from a place of Christianity or whether it comes from a place of other religions or spiritualities, it doesn't matter. If you were not raised in a world that had Jesus or God, if you were born in the Amazon jungle, an indigenous member of a tribe, even today, and you were born into this world and you had no exposure to the idea of Jesus or God, you would still love. You would still love anyone, anywhere. Having family would still love. And that to me is the number one rule of all. Love. And, did Jesus have it right? Yeah. Love thy neighbor. Golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And we should all get along pretty good. There's just a little message for today. Something to consider. Because I think it's good for folks to sit with some ideas that expand their ideas. Take all of this into consideration and look at the people around you and look at the churches and the organizations around you. I had a woman who I was talking to about this. She goes, well, I can believe a certain thing. The church that I go to might believe a certain thing. That doesn't mean I believe it. No, I'm not sure I'm down with that. If you align yourself with organizations that believe certain things, your presence is telling that organization that you're kind of behind it. If you're part of a church or an organization whose beliefs compromise the basic dignity of humans, all humans, regardless of race, creed, color, sexuality, gender, anything like that, you may want to raise your voice a little bit. And you might want to talk to that organization about love and what Christ had to say. That's it. Whether you're a believer in Christ or not, whether you're a believer in Odin or Osiris or Thor or Apollo or any of these big, big spirits out there, you're going to know love, and you're going to know the power of it. And that, I believe, is the most important thing of all. So thank you for taking the time to listen to this, and I hope this opens your mind a little bit. Take care of yourself. Remember, love your neighbor. Love yourself.